What would you do if the man who swore to protect you became the reason you had to disappear? 6 months pregnant. Elena DeLuca walked into one of New Orleans' most private riverfront restaurants expecting one quiet dinner with her husband, Matteo. DeLuca, the Mafia king everyone feared, but she once believed she could love. Instead, under candlelight and soft jazz, she saw him seated across from a runway heiress, his lips brushing her hand, like their vows had already been buried. Elena didn't scream. She didn't beg. She went home, placed her wedding ring on top of a letter, and vanished before dawn. But this is not just a story about betrayal. It is about motherhood power, family secrets, and the kind of love that must either change or destroy everything it touches. Stay until the end, because the letter Matteo finds will break him. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. The letter on Matteo DeLuca's desk did not begin with anger. That was what destroyed him first. It began with memory. 3 years earlier, before the private restaurant, before Celeste Beaumont, before Elena learned how cold a beautiful marriage could become, Matteo walked into a school library in the lower 9th Ward and met the only woman in New Orleans who looked at him like he was simply late. The morning had already been ruined before he arrived. Rain had soaked the city since dawn, turning the streets slick and silver. The old school building smelled of wet coats, pencil shavings, floor cleaner, and cafeteria bread. Children's drawings hung crooked on the walls. Paper suns, blue houses, families with stick arms, dreams made in crayon. Matteo DeLuca did not belong there. He came through the front doors in a charcoal suit, black overcoat, and polished shoes that had never met a puddle they could not avoid. 2 men followed him at a respectful distance, broad-shouldered and silent with eyes that moved too carefully over exits and windows. The principal hurried behind them, smiling with the frightened brightness of someone who had spent all morning rehearsing gratitude. Everyone in New Orleans knew the DeLuca name. The city called them donors in public. In whispers, they called them something else. Their shipping company moved freight along the river. Their construction firms repaired roads and built hotels. Their foundation paid for school libraries, hospital wings, youth programs, and campaign dinners where judges laughed too loudly at Matteo's jokes. Behind all that polish, the DeLuca family owned debts, secrets, favors, and the kind of loyalty men offered when fear sat at the table with them. Matteo had inherited the family at 33 after his father Lorenzo died in a private hospital room with too many flowers and too few answers. By 36, Matteo had become the kind of man people stood straighter for. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His quiet had teeth. That day he was supposed to smile beside a banner, shake the principal's hand, let a photographer capture him giving books to children, and leave before the rain ruined his afternoon. Then Elena Reed stepped out from between 2 shelves with a stack of picture books pressed against her chest. She wore a soft green sweater with sleeves pushed to her elbows, black pants, and cheap flats damp from the rain. Her brown hair was pinned badly with loose strands falling around her face. There was blue marker on the side of her hand and a small silver cross resting at her throat. A little boy tugged at her sleeve asking how to spell turtle. Matteo entered the library and the room changed. Adults stopped moving. Children looked up without understanding why the air had gone thin. The principal rushed forward, but Elena looked Matteo over once and said, "You're late." The principal's smile died on her face. Matteo stared at Elena. People had insulted him before, but always with fear hiding under the words. Elena's voice held no fear, only disappointment. Honest, practical disappointment, as if he were a parent who forgot pickup time. "I had business," Matteo said. Elena shifted the books against her hip. "So do we. The second graders have 15 minutes left before lunch. If you came for the photo stand by the banner, if you came to help sit on the rug, they're reading about sea turtles." The silence became almost physical. One of Matteo's men took half a step forward. Matteo lifted one finger. The man stopped. Elena did not move. Something in Matteo loosened. Not enough to change him. Not then, but enough to surprise him. He removed his coat, then his suit jacket. He folded both over the back of a chair and lowered himself onto the carpet with all the grace of a man who had not sat on a school rug since childhood. 15 children stared at him. A little girl with pink beads in her braids whispered, "Are you famous?" Matteo looked at Elena. Elena raised one eyebrow. He opened the book. "Only in boring rooms." The girl accepted that. Elena knelt beside him and turned the book right side up. "Also try not to sound like you're reading a hostage statement." Matteo looked at her. She looked back. No flinch, no apology. That was the first crack. Not love, not yet. Matteo would later tell himself it was curiosity, then irritation, then admiration. He would rename it half a dozen times before he admitted the truth. Elena Reed had walked into his life like a clean window in a room full of smoke, and he did not know whether to open it or break it. After that day, he found reasons to return. The library needed shelves. The DeLuca Foundation paid for them. The playground had rusted swings. A crew arrived before the week ended. The school needed coats for winter. Boxes appeared in the front office with no note except a printed label. Elena thanked the foundation. Never him. It annoyed him more than it should have. One afternoon, he found her in the hallway after dismissal, carrying a plastic crate full of donated books. The crate was too heavy. One corner had cracked. She had it balanced against her hip while trying not to drop a row of paperbacks onto the floor. "You could ask someone to help you," Matteo said. Elena did not stop walking. "I could, but you won't. Most people who say that are not offering help. They're asking to be admired for noticing." He took the crate from her anyway. She let him. They walked toward the library, their steps echoing through the empty hall. Outside, rain tapped against the windows. The school had that late afternoon hush, the kind that comes after children leave and the building seems to exhale. Matteo glanced at her hand. "You have marker on you again. I work with children." "You say that like it explains everything." "It usually does." He carried the crate into the library and set it on a table. "Do you always talk to donors like this?" Elena began sorting the books. "Only the ones who look like they need it. And what do I look like I need?" She looked up then. For a moment, the room felt strangely still. "A person who tells you no and survives." Matteo laughed. It came out before he could stop it. Low, real, rusted from disuse. Elena's mouth softened, but she did not smile fully. That bothered him too. He wanted to earn it. Their first coffee was not supposed to be a date. Matteo told himself he wanted to discuss a reading scholarship. Elena told herself she was only accepting because the school needed money. She chose a crowded cafe on Magazine Street, arrived 10 minutes early, and bought her own tea before he walked in. He noticed immediately. "You don't trust me," he said, sliding into the chair across from her. Elena stirred honey into her tea. "I don't know you. Most people think they do. Most people are lazy." He leaned back, amused, despite himself. "You have an answer for everything." "No. Just for men who make statements and pretend they're questions." Outside New Orleans moved in rain-blurred color. Streetcars hummed past. A delivery truck splashed water near the curb. A woman under a red umbrella laughed into her phone. Inside, Matteo told Elena careful pieces of himself. His family owned shipping companies, construction firms, security contracts, restaurants. He said it smoothly, the way men like him described power without naming the blood under it. Elena listened. She did not act impressed. That was new. He told her his father had been hard but fair in a way Matteo only understood after death. His mother was harder. Serafina DeLuca believed tenderness was useful only when staged for cameras. In their house, love had sounded like instruction. Sit straighter. Speak less. Never owe. Never beg. Never bleed where people can see. Elena did not try to comfort him. She only said, "That must have been lonely." Matteo looked at her. No one spoke to him like loneliness was something he was allowed to have. When he asked about her life, Elena answered plainly. Her mother had died when Elena was 17. Her father had worked as a mechanic until a stroke took his left side and most of his pride. Her younger sister Lily owned a flower shop in Baton Rouge and pretended not to be drowning in bills. Elena had worked through college, taught school, paid medical bills in pieces, and built her days out of small paychecks early mornings and the stubborn belief that children deserved adults who showed up. Matteo listened to her talk about ordinary goodness like it was a foreign language. He did not understand it. He wanted to. By their third dinner, he had stopped pretending all their meetings were about funding. Elena still made him meet her in public places. She paid for her own meals when she could. She refused every expensive gift he tried to send. He bought her flowers once, white roses, 2 dozen. She brought them to school and put them in the teacher's lounge. When he asked why she had not taken them home, she said, "They made the secretary happy. They were for you, and I enjoyed them for 10 minutes before sharing them with people who needed a good morning." Matteo stared at her like she had committed a crime against romance. Elena laughed at his face. That laugh followed him all day. Their first kiss happened by the Mississippi after dinner beneath a sky low with fog. The river moved black and heavy beside them. Music drifted from a bar down the street. Elena's scarf kept slipping loose in the damp wind. Matteo reached to fix it. She went still. It lasted less than a second, but Matteo saw it. He saw everything. It was his curse and his trade. He lowered his hand. "I would never hurt you," he said. Elena looked at him. Streetlight caught in her eyes. Men say that like hurt only means hands. The answer struck him clean across the chest. He had no defense, no charming reply, no velvet lie. So he gave her the closest thing to honesty he had. "My life is not clean, Elena." She turned toward the river. "Neither is anyone's. Some people just hide the dirt under nicer rugs. You should stay away from me." "I know." He looked at her. "That was not the answer I expected. It's the honest one. And will you?" Her breath made a pale cloud in the cold air. "I haven't decided." He should have walked away for her. Instead, when she stepped closer, he let her. The kiss was quiet. No thunder. No music swelling except from the bar down the street where a trumpet player missed a note and kept going. Elena's mouth was warm. Her hand rested against his chest right over the place where his heart had learned to stay locked. For one dangerous season, Matteo believed wanting something beautiful might not mean destroying it. Serafina DeLuca met Elena 2 months later. The DeLuca mansion stood in the garden district behind iron gates and live oaks heavy with Spanish moss. The white columns gleamed under soft lights. The driveway curved past fountains, black cars, and flower beds maintained with military discipline. It looked less like a home than a verdict passed down through generations. Elena wore a navy dress Matteo had sent over after she rejected 3 others. "I feel like I'm wearing a car payment," she whispered as they walked inside. "You look beautiful." "That was not my concern." "I know." His hand settled lightly at the small of her back. For once, Elena did not pull away. Inside, Serafina waited beneath a portrait of Matteo's grandfather. She was silver-haired, elegant, and still as a blade laid carefully on silk. Her pearls were perfect. Her smile was not. She kissed Matteo on both cheeks. Then she turned to Elena. "So, you are the schoolteacher?" Elena smiled politely. "And you are Matteo's mother?" Serafina's mouth curved. "For now, we both have accurate information." Dinner was served in a room long enough to make intimacy impossible. Crystal glasses, white candles, silverware lined up like weapons. Men in dark suits stood near the doors and pretended not to listen. Serafina asked questions that sounded harmless until they landed. Where did Elena's family summer? They did not. What clubs did her father belong to? None. Had Elena considered leaving teaching once Matteo could provide? No. Did Elena understand the obligations that came with loving a DeLuca man? Elena set her wine glass down carefully. I am learning, Matteo. I am not applying for a position. Serafina looked at Matteo. Matteo said nothing. It was a small silence. To anyone else, it might have passed unnoticed. But Elena felt it, a cold pane of glass lowering between them. Later, Matteo took a call in the library. His voice became low behind the closed door, business sharp and controlled. Elena stood near the staircase looking at old family portraits that seemed to watch her with inherited judgment. Serafina appeared beside her without a sound. You think he chose you because you are different, she said. Elena did not turn. Did he? For now. Elena faced her. Serafina's eyes moved over her dress, her simple necklace, the hands she had not learned to keep still. Powerful men enjoy women who do not fear them. It feels refreshing. Like weather. But weather changes deer. Blood does not. Elena held her voice steady. I am not afraid of you. No, Serafina said softly. That is what makes you dangerous. Fear can be arranged. Love makes people careless. When Matteo returned, he touched Elena's elbow and asked if she was ready to leave. Elena looked at him. She almost told him. Then she saw the tiredness around his mouth. The phone still in his hand, the shadow of whatever world kept calling him back. She said yes. That was her first small surrender. There would be others. Matteo proposed 8 months after that first day in the library. He did not choose a restaurant. He did not ask in public. He knew Elena would hate spectacle, and he had learned, at least in some ways, to listen. He took her back to the school after hours. The library was quiet, washed in soft winter light. New shelves lined the walls. Children's drawings hung from string near the windows. The reading rug had faded where hundreds of small bodies had sat cross-legged with books open in their laps. Elena found him standing between the picture books and the turtle poster holding a small box. She stopped. Matteo. I know, he said. You hate surprises. I hate being ambushed near alphabet charts. He smiled, but his hands were not steady. That frightened her more than his darkness ever had. Matteo DeLuca, nervous, was something the world had never been allowed to see. He opened the box. A plain gold band rested inside. No diamonds, no performance. Nothing that would make Elena feel owned by wealth instead of loved by a man. I am not a good man, he said. Elena's face softened. I know. I have done things you would not forgive if you saw them clearly. Then why are you asking me? He looked around the library, then back at her. Because when I am with you, I remember there might have been a version of me before all this. Or maybe I invented him because I wanted to believe I was not born ruined. I do not know. But I want to be closer to him. Elena looked at the ring. That is not the same as changing. No, Matteo said. But it is the first honest thing I have. Tears rose before she could stop them. She loved him. That was the terrible truth. Not blindly, not foolishly. She saw enough of the shadows to know they were real. She knew the DeLuca name came with locked doors and men who spoke in half-sentences. She knew Serafina watched her like a problem waiting to be solved. But Matteo looked at her in that library as if he was asking not only for her hand, but for a road back to the human part of himself. Elena wanted to believe love could be a road, so she said yes. They married quietly in a chapel outside the city, with white flowers, soft rain, and fewer guests than Serafina considered acceptable. Lily stood beside Elena, crying openly and glaring at Matteo in the same breath. Serafina sat in the front pew in silver silk, her expression suitable for a funeral she had not approved. During the vows, Matteo held Elena's hands as if they were something breakable and sacred. For a moment, Elena almost forgot the shadows waiting beyond the chapel doors. Almost. The beginning of their marriage was beautiful. That was what made the rest so hard to survive. Matteo learned the small things first. Elena liked chicory coffee with too much cream. She got cold even in mild weather. She slept with one foot outside the blanket. She underlined sentences in books but refused to fold page corners. When she graded papers at the kitchen island, she drew tiny stars next to good answers and wrote kind notes in the margins because children remembered red ink longer than adults thought. Matteo would stand in the doorway and watch her tie loose sleeves rolled face unreadable. What she would ask? Nothing. You look like you're studying a crime scene. I am trying to understand why a star sticker can make a child work harder than fear. Elena would smile. Because fear makes people obey. Encouragement makes them try. He would say nothing, but she could see the words settling somewhere inside him. There were nights when he came home early and cooked badly. Nights when they danced barefoot in the kitchen to old soul records. Nights when he rested his head in her lap and let her run her fingers through his hair, his eyes closed. The whole city held outside the walls for one rare hour. He touched her with a tenderness that made her believe his body knew reverence, even if his world did not. For a while, Elena thought love could make a dangerous man gentle. Then the phone calls returned. After midnight, before dawn, during breakfast, during dinner, during the quiet parts of a Sunday afternoon. Matteo would glance at the screen and something in his face would close. I have to take this. At first he apologized. Then he only stood. The study door would shut behind him. His voice on the other side became a thing Elena did not recognize. Cold. Precise. Final. Men came to the penthouse at odd hours. They stopped speaking when Elena entered. One of them once stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. Elena asked Matteo about it that night. He kissed her forehead. It's handled. The phrase seemed harmless the first time. Then it became a pattern. Where were you? It's handled. Why did your mother schedule a charity luncheon for me without asking? It's handled. Why is there blood on your cuff? It's handled. Why did your men follow me to the school? It's handled. Why do I feel alone in a house full of people paid to protect me? That question she did not ask. By the second year, Serafina no longer treated Elena as a temporary amusement. She treated her as an inconvenience that had failed to disappear. She corrected Elena's clothes. Soft colors make you look unsure. She corrected her posture. Do not lean when seated. It suggests you are asking permission to stay. She corrected her smile. You smile too openly. It invites familiarity. At a hospital fundraiser, Elena stood beside Serafina near an auction table covered in crystal bowls and signed footballs. Women in silk dresses drifted around them, laughing in expensive voices. Serafina leaned close without moving her mouth. You are too warm with people. Elena kept her eyes on the room. I thought warmth was the point of charity. The point of charity is influence. Elena looked at her then. That explains why yours always feels cold. Serafina's eyes sharpened. By the time Matteo and Elena got into the car that night, he had already heard about it. He rubbed a hand over his face. You do not have to provoke her. Elena turned from the window. She insulted me. She tests everyone. I am not everyone. I am your wife. I know. He said it with exhaustion, not conviction. Elena stared at him. Knowing was not the same as choosing. When Elena became pregnant, hope returned so quickly she was ashamed of it. She told Matteo on a rainy Thursday morning. He had just come in from the gym, damp hair-white shirt phone already in his hand. She stood in the bathroom doorway holding the test. For 1 second, he did not understand. Then he did. The phone slipped from his hand onto the bed. Elena. His voice broke on her name. He crossed the room, dropped to his knees, and pressed his forehead against her stomach, though there was nothing to feel yet. "I'll keep you both safe," he whispered. Elena closed her eyes and placed her hand in his hair. For 1 week, he became the man she had married in the library. He came home before dark. He read pregnancy books with the solemn focus of someone studying enemy strategy. He attended the first ultrasound and stared at the screen as if God had placed a miracle in black and white. When the heartbeat filled the room fast and bright and impossible, Matteo turned his face away. Elena saw the tears anyway. He started building the crib himself, though he had no talent for instructions and less patience for tiny screws. Elena found him sitting on the nursery floor one evening, surrounded by wooden pieces glaring at the manual. "This thing was designed by someone with a personal grudge against fathers," he said. Elena laughed so hard she had to sit down. He looked up at her, and for that moment the hardness left him. "You are beautiful," he said. "I am round." "Still beautiful." She believed him. Then a shipment vanished near Mobile. A union leader changed sides. A judge stopped returning calls. A federal subpoena landed on Serafina's desk. The DeLuca world tightened around Matteo, and Matteo led it. The crib remained unfinished. One rail leaned against the wall for weeks. The yellow blanket Elena bought stayed folded on the mattress, waiting for a home that kept being postponed. Matteo missed the second doctor's appointment, then the third. He sent flowers and apologies. Elena learned the shape of the ultrasound room alone. The paper sheet under her thighs, the cold gel, the kind technician who asked whether her husband was parking the car, then learned not to ask again. At night, Elena stood in the nursery with one hand on her growing belly. She imagined a different life, a small house, a backyard, a kitchen table with mismatched chairs, Matteo coming home before dinner because no one feared him enough to need him after dark. Their daughter asleep in a room where no family portraits watched from the walls. No guards downstairs. No secret phones. No mother-in-law arranging power like furniture. Then Matteo's voice would rise behind the study door, low and lethal, and the dream would fold itself away. One evening in December, Elena woke alone in their bed to the sound of rain hitting the glass. Matteo's side was cold. She sat up slowly, one hand supporting her stomach, and saw light under the study door. His voice came through quieter than usual, but sharp enough to cut. "No, not Celeste. Not like that." Elena went still. A pause followed. Then Matteo said, "My wife is not part of the arrangement." The baby moved beneath Elena's hand. In the hallway, the penthouse seemed to hold its breath. Matteo opened the study door a moment later and found Elena standing there barefoot in her nightgown, looking at him as if the locked room had finally spoken her name. Matteo opened the study door and found Elena standing barefoot in the hallway, one hand beneath her stomach, the other resting against the wall, as if the house had tilted under her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Rain slid down the glass behind him. The study smelled of cigar smoke leather and the sharp trace of whiskey he had not touched. The desk lamp burned low over scattered papers. Elena saw names, shipping routes, numbers circled in red, and a folder Matteo moved too quickly beneath another file. But one name had already escaped. Celeste. Matteo looked at Elena's face and knew she had heard enough to be hurt, but not enough to understand. "Elena," he said quietly. She looked past him into the study. "Who is Celeste?" His jaw tightened just slightly. That was his first mistake. Matteo could lie with his mouth, but his body always moved first. "She is connected to the Beaumont family." Elena waited. The baby shifted under her ribs. She pressed her palm there, steadying both of them. And why was my name in the same sentence as hers? Matteo stepped into the hallway and closed the study door behind him. Elena noticed that too. He was always closing doors before answering questions. "It is business." She gave a small, tired laugh. "Of course it is." "Elena." "No. Let me guess. Ports, permits, judges, men with clean shoes and dirty hands. Your mother wants something, and Celeste Beaumont is part of the price." Matteo's eyes sharpened. "You do not know what you heard. I know what I felt." He looked at her, then really looked at the loose hair around her face, the shadows beneath her eyes, the way one of his shirts hung over her pregnant body because she had stopped caring how she looked in a house where no one saw her clearly. His voice softened. "Come back to bed." She studied him. "That is not an answer." "No," he said. "It is mercy. For tonight." Elena's face changed at that word. Mercy. As if the truth were something too heavy for her to lift. As if pregnancy had made her fragile instead of tired. As if she had not been carrying loneliness with both hands long before she carried his child. She turned away first. Matteo watched her walk down the hall and hated the silence he let follow her. The next evening, Serafina summoned them to dinner at the Garden District mansion. She never invited. She summoned. The mansion looked untouched by weather. Even after a day of rain, the white columns gleamed. The hedges stood trimmed and obedient, and the gas lanterns flickered like old money had taught fire how to behave. Elena stepped from the car in a black dress that fit too tightly over her stomach, and a coat Matteo had placed around her shoulders without asking. His hand hovered near her back, but she did not lean into it. Inside the house smelled of lilies, beeswax, and polished wood. Serafina sat at the head of the long dining table in ivory silk, her silver hair pinned without a strand out of place. She looked at Elena's belly before she looked at Elena's face. "My granddaughter is growing," Serafina said. Elena removed her gloves slowly. "So am I, apparently." Matteo glanced at her. Serafina smiled without warmth. "Pregnancy has not softened your tongue." "No, just my ankles." The faintest pause moved around the table. One of Serafina's men looked down at his plate. Matteo almost smiled, then remembered himself. Dinner began with oysters, then redfish, then lamb. Elena barely touched. Serafina spoke of a charity auction, a judge's retirement party, a storm-damaged warehouse near the river. Everything sounded harmless if someone did not know how to listen. Elena had learned. Finally, Serafina set down her wineglass. "The Beaumonts are becoming impatient." Matteo's fork stopped against the plate. Elena kept her eyes on Serafina, impatient about what Serafina turned to her with the composed generosity of a woman explaining weather to a child. "The Beaumont family has influence where we require stability. Permits port boards land use federal friendships. Their daughter Celeste has become the public face of their interests." The model, Elena said. Former model Serafina corrected. Now a philanthropist, investor, and very useful woman. Matteo's voice came low. "Mother." Serafina did not look at him. Celeste was raised in rooms where power has rules. She understands discretion. She understands image. She understands that standing beside a man can strengthen him if she does not mistake herself for the source of his strength. Elena felt the baby move a hard little press beneath her ribs. She placed her hand over it and smiled faintly. "That sounds exhausting." Serafina's eyes cooled. "It sounds necessary." Matteo reached for his water. Elena watched him. She waited for him to draw a line sharp enough that even his mother could not step over it. He said, "The arrangement can be handled through contracts." Serafina's smile deepened. "Contracts do not smile for cameras, Matteo. Women do." The room went still. Elena looked at her husband. He was angry. She could see it in the set of his mouth, in the way his fingers tightened around the glass, in the stillness that made dangerous men quiet before they became worse. But anger was not protection if it never reached the person who deserved it. On the drive home, New Orleans blurred beyond the windows. Wet pavement caught the streetlights. Music spilled from a bar on Frenchman Street as their car passed bright trumpet notes rising into the humid dark. Elena sat with her hands folded over her stomach. She wants Celeste near you. Matteo kept his eyes on the road. She wants the Beaumonts near the business. That is not what I said. I know what you said. Then answer me. His hand tightened on the wheel. There is nothing between me and Celeste. Is that supposed to comfort me? It is the truth. No, Matteo. The truth would be telling your mother that your marriage is not a chair she can replace at the table. He said nothing. Elena looked out the window. You always know what she is doing. You just never stop her before I bleed from it. That landed. She felt it before she saw it. His whole body changed shoulders, hard, face closing like iron gates. Elena. What you think I obey her? I think you confuse resisting her in private with protecting me in public. The rest of the ride passed in silence. In the weeks that followed, Celeste Beaumont became a ghost with perfume. Her name appeared everywhere. A port reception, a winter gala, a private breakfast with donors, a luncheon hosted by Serafina for women who wore pearls like armor and called Elena brave when they meant unsuitable. Celeste's photograph appeared in a society column beside Matteo's. She was tall, elegant, with honey blonde hair swept back from a face made for cameras. Matteo stood beside her under the soft light of a museum atrium, his expression unreadable. 3 feet between them. It should have been enough. It was not. Elena stared at the photograph at the kitchen island while her tea cooled. The caption called them pillars of the new Gulf Commerce Initiative. New. That word scraped at her. Matteo came home late that night. His tie was loose. His eyes were tired. He found Elena in the nursery folding tiny white onesies into a drawer. She did not look at him. Were you with her today? He leaned against the doorway. At the museum event, with 200 people. That was not what I asked. Elena. She turned then. Have you been alone with her? Something flashed in his eyes. Offense first, hurt second. Guilt nowhere she could name, which almost made it worse. No. She watched him too long. Do not answer like a king. Answer like my husband. His face softened, but the softness came late. No, he said. I have not been alone with her. Elena nodded and went back to folding. She wanted to believe him. The wanting felt like hunger. It made her ashamed. Behind her, Matteo entered the room. He picked up the unfinished crib rail from where it leaned against the wall. I will finish this tomorrow. Elena smoothed a onesie flat with both hands. You said that last week. I know. And the week before. I know. The rail lowered slowly in his hands. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her. The sight of Mafia DeLuca on his knees still had the power to break some foolish part of her. He placed both hands on her stomach. The baby kicked. His face changed. It always did. The hardness left him so quickly it hurt to see because it proved he could become gentle. He simply did not stay there. Strong girl, he whispered. Elena covered his hand with hers. She misses you. His eyes closed. I know. Do you? He opened them. The question sat between them, breathing. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Neither of them moved. It vibrated again. He looked. Elena already knew. Your mother, she said. Matteo did not answer the call, but the room had answered it for him. By Thursday morning, he tried to fix what had been cracking. Elena sat on the edge of their bed, rubbing lotion into the tight skin of her stomach. She had slept badly. The baby had been restless, and Matteo had come home at 2 in the morning smelling of rain cigar smoke and someone else's expensive perfume. He stood before the mirror fastening his watch. "Dinner tonight," he said. Elena looked up. "With who?" "With me." She searched his reflection. "Just us." He met her eyes in the mirror. Just us. Her chest loosened so quickly she hated herself for it. Hope had become humiliating. It survived on crumbs and called them meals. What time 8? The Marini room. That place with the impossible reservations? A faint smile touched his mouth. "I know a guy. You are the guy for some things." For a moment he looked like the man from the school library, the man who sat on the carpet and read about sea turtles because a woman with marker on her hand told him to, the man who had once seemed almost reachable. Elena stood and crossed the room. Matteo placed his palm over her belly. The baby kicked hard. His breath caught. Elena saw it, loved him for it, hated him for making love still possible. "She knows your voice," Elena said softly. Matteo bent and pressed his mouth to her stomach. "I am sorry," he whispered. Elena's fingers moved into his hair. "For what?" He looked up at her. "For making you ask." His phone rang on the dresser. The name lit the screen. "Serafina." Elena stepped back first. "Answer it." "I do not have to." "No," she said. "But you already left the room." He did not pick up. The call ended. Then came another. By late afternoon, Serafina had sharpened the hook. Matteo arrived at the riverfront office after a message from his mother said the Beaumont contracts were collapsing. He found her standing near the windows looking down at barges moving along the Mississippi. Celeste Beaumont sat on the leather sofa with her legs crossed, black dress smooth over her knees, red lipstick perfect. Matteo stopped at the door. "No." Serafina turned. "Good evening to you too. I have dinner with my wife. You have a family bleeding influence because Lionel Beaumont believes you are insulting his daughter." Celeste looked down, playing embarrassment well. Matteo's voice turned cold. "This is not my problem." Serafina walked toward him slowly. "Everything is your problem. That is what your father understood before sentiment made him weak." At the mention of Lorenzo, Matteo's face closed. Serafina saw the shift. She always saw the wound before pressing. Lionel wants warmth, not signatures. He wants to see respect. 10 minutes at the Marini room. A drink. A photograph if someone happens to notice. Then you can return to playing husband. Matteo's eyes darkened. "Do not speak about Elena like that." Serafina stepped close enough for only him to hear. "Then stop letting her make you look divided." For 7 minutes, Matteo refused. For 7 minutes, Serafina let him spend himself against the bars she had built inside him since childhood. Then she said Lorenzo would have protected the family first. Matteo turned away. That was how she knew she had won. The Marini room glowed above the river like a secret wrapped in amber light, the kind of place where rich men did not raise their voices because the walls already knew too much. Rain streaked the tall windows. Candles trembled on white tables. A jazz trio played low near the bar, soft enough to make every whisper feel intimate. Celeste was seated in the corner booth when Matteo arrived. She wore black silk emerald earrings and the calm of a woman trained to look effortless while obeying orders. "Your mother said you might be difficult," she said. Matteo sat across from her but did not remove his coat. "My mother says many things. Tonight most of them are lies." Celeste lifted one shoulder. "Only most. I am leaving in 10 minutes. Then we should be convincing quickly." His eyes hardened. She gave a faint smile, then looked toward the entrance. "She also said Elena might come." Matteo went still. "What did you say?" Celeste's smile thinned. "Perhaps I misunderstood." He reached for his phone. Before he could call Elena Grant Whitlock arrived with contracts under one arm and urgency polished into every word. Behind him came Lionel Beaumont, heavyset and silver-haired, smelling of tobacco and money. Then a port commissioner. Then a judge Matteo despised, but needed for a matter that could not reach open court. The dinner became a trap made of obligations. Matteo sat through it with his anger folded under his tongue. He answered what had to be answered, refused what had to be refused, watched Celeste perform charm beside him like a woman walking a wire over an empty room. By the time the men finally left, the candles had burned low. Matteo stood. "This meeting is over." Celeste reached across the table and touched his hand. "Matteo, wait." He looked down at her fingers. "Remove your hand." Across the room, the hostess pulled back the velvet curtain. Elena stepped inside. For one terrible second, sound left the restaurant. No music, no rain, no clink of glass. Only Elena in a burgundy dress, one hand on her belly, her face pale and still beneath the candlelight. Celeste saw her first. The smile that moved over Celeste's mouth was small enough to deny and cruel enough to remember. Matteo followed her gaze. Too late. "Elena." His voice cracked through the silence. Elena's eyes moved from Celeste's hand to Matteo's face. In that instant, she did not see one betrayal. She saw every locked door, every missed appointment, every time he had said it was handled, every time his mother spoke, and he swallowed the answer Elena needed. Matteo stepped out of the booth. "It is not what you think." Elena's expression did not change. That was worse than tears. Celeste lowered her hand slowly, almost gracefully. "Elena," Matteo said again. She turned and walked away. Matteo moved after her, but Celeste said his name. Not loudly, just enough. Just 1 second stolen in a night built from stolen seconds. By the time Matteo reached the stairs, Elena was already outside. Rain swept across the sidewalk. Her driver stood by the curb, startled, holding the back door open as Elena slid into the car. "Elena." She looked at him through the rain-streaked glass. He reached the curb as the car pulled away. For one breath, he saw her hand pressed against her mouth. Then the car turned into traffic and disappeared into the wet New Orleans night. Across the street, beneath the shadow of a black umbrella, Serafina sat in the back of a town car and read the message Celeste had sent. She saw. Serafina closed the phone and looked toward the restaurant doors where her son stood in the rain like a man watching his life leave without permission. Her driver glanced into the mirror. "Home, ma'am?" Serafina's eyes remained on Matteo. "Not yet." Inside Elena's car, the city moved past in broken reflections. Streetlights, wet brick, a woman laughing under an awning, a couple sharing a cigarette outside a bar. Ordinary people doing ordinary things, untouched by dynasties, mothers' contracts, and women placed like knives at dinner tables. Elena's breath came shallow. The driver asked, "Should I wait for Mr. DeLuca at the penthouse?" Elena looked down at her wedding ring. For years, she had thought leaving would feel like rage. It felt quieter than that. It felt like a door inside her closing without a sound. "No," she said. The baby kicked once beneath her hand. Elena closed her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I know." The car crossed into the dark artery of the city, carrying her toward the penthouse, toward the suitcase, toward the letter Matteo did not yet know would change everything. The car carried Elena through New Orleans as if the city had already decided not to look. Rain blurred the windows. Streetlights bled into the glass. Somewhere on Bourbon Street, music rose bright and careless, a trumpet laughing over a wound it did not know existed. Elena sat in the back seat with one hand over her mouth and the other curved around the life inside her. She did not cry. Not yet. Crying felt like something that belonged to women who were surprised by pain. Elena was past surprise. What she felt now was older and colder. It was the quiet understanding that some heartbreaks did not arrive as lightning. They arrived as proof. The driver kept glancing at her through the mirror. Mrs. DeLuca. Should I call Mr. DeLuca? Elena looked down at the gold ring on her finger. The diamond Matteo had wanted to buy her had been enormous. She had refused it in the jewelry store with one hand over her mouth, laughing at the absurdity of it. I am not wearing a chandelier for rich people, she had told him. So he had bought the plain gold band she wanted. Simple, warm, human. She touched it now and felt nothing simple left inside it. No, she said. The driver looked back at the road. When the penthouse doors opened, Elena stepped into a silence so expensive it felt staged. The marble entryway gleamed under soft lights. The river shone black beyond the glass walls. A white arrangement of lilies stood on the console table because Serafina had once said fresh flowers kept a home from looking abandoned. Elena stared at them. Even the flowers looked instructed. She went first to the nursery. The door was half open. A pale yellow blanket lay folded on the unfinished crib. One rail still leaned against the wall, waiting for Matteo to keep a promise that had seemed small until it became everything. Elena placed her hand on the rail. The wood was smooth, untouched, waiting. The baby kicked. Elena closed her eyes. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry I waited this long. Then she went to the bedroom and took down a small suitcase from the top shelf of the closet. Her movements were careful at first. Jeans, sweaters, underwear, prenatal vitamins, medical records, her mother's silver cross, cash from the back of a drawer Matteo did not know she used, the ultrasound photo from her nightstand. Then her hands started shaking. She stood before the mirror. A pregnant woman looked back at her in a burgundy dress, damp at the hem lipstick, still perfect hair pinned beautifully by hands that had believed in dinner. Elena touched the glass. You are not going to beg, she said to her reflection. You are not going to explain pain to people who profit from it. The front door opened. Elena. Matteo's voice moved through the penthouse with the force of command. That voice had stopped men from running, made judges return calls, made rooms go still before he entered them. Elena folded another sweater. His footsteps came fast down the hall. He appeared in the doorway, rain on his shoulders, hair dark from the storm, eyes moving first to the suitcase and then to her face. What are you doing? Leaving. The word hit the room so cleanly it seemed to make the lights colder. Because of what you saw. Elena looked at him. Because of what I finally stopped pretending not to see. His jaw tightened. It was a business dinner. You kissed her hand. She touched mine first, and you were powerless to move away. Something moved across his face. Anger, guilt, pride. Too quick to name, too late to matter. You do not understand what was happening. There it is, Elena said. Your favorite door. Elena. You hide behind that sentence every time you do not want to tell me the truth. Matteo removed his coat slowly, as if controlling his body might control the room. My mother arranged it. Celeste was part of a Beaumont negotiation. I did not ask for any of it. But you stayed. His mouth closed. Elena zipped the suitcase. You always stay where power asks you to stay. Then you come home and call it duty. He stepped closer. You are 6 months pregnant. You are hurt. You are angry. You are not walking out into a storm in the middle of the night. She lifted the suitcase from the bed. It was heavier than she expected. She did not let him see it. Move. No. The room changed. Not because he shouted. He did not. Not because he raised a hand. He would have cut off his own before doing that. But Matteo DeLuca did not need violence to fill a doorway. His body became a wall. His silence became a lock. For one terrible second, Elena understood the shape of the man other people feared. And worse, she understood the weaker part of herself that wanted him to stop her in a way that felt like love. The baby moved beneath her ribs. Elena looked down. That was enough. She stepped around him. Matteo caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough. Elena looked at his hand. Let go before I remember this forever. His face went pale. He let go. She walked to his study. The room smelled like him. Leather, ink, smoke, a trace of winter rain. She placed her wedding ring on top of the letter she had written before leaving for the restaurant, back when her heart had not yet understood why her hand had been preparing a goodbye. Matteo stood in the doorway. Elena. She did not turn. If you wanted a wife who could be replaced, you should have married a woman who forgot how to leave. Then she walked out. The train to Baton Rouge left after midnight. Elena bought the ticket with cash hood pulled low suitcase beside her phone buzzing until she shut it off. Every vibration felt like Matteo's hand around her wrist. Every silence after felt like the world asking if she was sure. She was not sure. She was only done. The train was nearly empty. A student slept with earbuds in. An old man read a paperback under a dim light. Across the aisle, a mother fed crackers to a toddler one by one, whispering tiny comforts each time the child fussed. Elena watched them. The first tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. Then another came. By the time New Orleans vanished behind rain-streaked glass, Elena was crying silently into her sleeve, one hand holding the ultrasound photo like a passport to a country she had not reached yet. Lily Reed lived above her flower shop in Baton Rouge, in a narrow apartment that always smelled faintly of roses, dust, and coffee. When she opened the door at 2 a.m, she wore an old college sweatshirt, cotton shorts, and the look of a woman ready to commit a crime for someone she loved. Her face changed before Elena spoke. What did he do? Elena stood in the hallway with Rain in her hair suitcase by her side, wedding finger bare. Enough. Lily pulled her inside. There were people who asked questions because they wanted answers. Lily was not one of them. She locked the door, made tea, found blankets, took Elena's wet coat and hung it over a chair. She did all of it without looking too long at Elena's left hand. Only when Elena sat on the couch with both hands on her belly did Lily kneel in front of her. Did he hurt you? Elena shook her head. Not with his hands. Lily's mouth tightened. That counts. Elena tried to breathe. For months she had told herself she was being strong, that silence was dignity, that patience was love, that marriage meant giving Matteo time to become the man he wanted to be. But sitting in Lily's small apartment with rain tapping against cheap windows and a chipped mug warming her hands, Elena finally heard the truth. I thought I was being strong, she whispered, but I was just being quiet. Lily's face crumpled. Quiet kept you alive in that house, she said, but it does not have to be your language forever. That was when Elena broke. Not beautifully, not gracefully. She folded forward over her stomach and sobbed until Lily wrapped both arms around her and held on as if the whole night might try to take her back. For 2 days, Matteo did not come. That should have comforted Elena. It did not. She told herself he was giving her space. Then that he was too proud. Then that Serafina had already turned the machinery of the family toward Baton Rouge, and Matteo was deciding whether his wife could be bought back, threatened back, or mourned in private. On the 3rd morning, flowers arrived. White lilies. Elena stared at them in the doorway of the shop while the delivery boy shifted from one foot to the other. Lily came down the stairs behind her. Absolutely not. The boy swallowed. I just deliver them, ma'am. Elena took the card. No message, only Matteo's signature. She handed the flowers back. "Take them to the hospital." The boy blinked. "What? Someone there needs them more than I do." By noon came roses, then a velvet box containing a bracelet Elena had never wanted, then a handwritten note. "Come home. We can fix this." Lily read it over her shoulder. "He thinks guilt has a delivery schedule." Elena folded the note once. "No. He thinks love can be gift-wrapped after it has been neglected." She placed the note in a drawer and did not answer. That evening, the black car came. Elena heard it before she saw it. Expensive engines had a certain sound against wet pavement. Smooth, predatory, out of place on Lily's narrow street. Lily looked through the curtain. "He is here." Elena stood in the kitchen slicing an apple she no longer wanted. Her hand froze around the knife. "You do not have to see him," Lily said. "I know." But her voice did not sound like she knew anything. The knock came. 3 firm taps. Lily walked to the door and opened it only as far as the chain allowed. Matteo stood in the hall in a dark suit and no overcoat, like he had left somewhere in a hurry and forgotten weather belonged to everyone. His face was drawn. His beard had started to show. He looked past Lily, searching the apartment. "I need to speak to my wife." Lily did not move. "Your wife needed to speak to you for months. You were busy." His eyes cut to her. "Lily." "No. You do not get to say my name like we are family while my sister is hiding in my kitchen trying not to shake." Elena closed her eyes. Matteo's voice lowered. "She is carrying my child." Lily leaned closer to the door. "Then maybe you should have remembered she was carrying your heart too." Silence. Elena gripped the counter. For a moment she thought Matteo would force the door. Not with violence, with Matteo's kind of pressure. A call to the landlord. A threat folded inside politeness. A reminder that locks only mattered to people without power. Instead he stepped back. "Elena," he said, voice rough enough to reach her through the wall. "I know you can hear me." She did not answer. "I know my mother arranged the dinner. I know Celeste played along. I did not ask for it." Elena almost laughed. "Intentions. Men like Matteo loved intentions. They held them up like clean shirts over dirty hands." Lily said, "Leave. This is not between you and me." "No," Lily said. "It is between my sister and every person who made her feel small enough to vanish." The hallway stayed quiet for another breath. Then Matteo said, "Tell her I will not stop trying." Lily shut the door. Elena put the knife down before her hand betrayed her. "He sounded awful," Lily said softly. Elena stared at the apple slices. "Good." But the word did not feel good. It felt like blood in her mouth. The next morning, Elena's phone rang from an unknown number. She was alone in the apartment while Lily worked downstairs. Rain had stopped, but the windows still held the gray light of bad weather. Elena almost ignored it. Then something cold moved through her, some instinct sharpened by life inside the DeLuca house. She answered. "Elena DeLuca." A woman's voice, elegant and calm. "How quickly you remember the name when you are hiding from it." Elena's hand tightened around the phone. "Serafina, we should talk. I have nothing to say to you." "Then listen. I know what you saw at the restaurant. More importantly, I know why you saw it." Elena went still. Serafina named an old hotel tea room downtown. Noon. Alone. Then the line went dead. Lily begged her not to go. Elena went anyway. The tea room sat inside a hotel old enough to pretend its ghosts were part of the charm. Brass railings, marble floors, velvet chairs, women in pearls murmuring over porcelain cups as if the world had never raised its voice. Serafina. DeLuca sat near the window in a cream suit. Silver hair, pinned perfectly, black gloves folded beside her tea. She did not stand. "You look pale." "I am pregnant and living out of a suitcase." A small smile. "There she is." I wondered how much spine remained. Elena sat across from her. "Say what you called me to say." Serafina stirred her tea once, though she had added nothing to it. Celeste did exactly what I asked. The room narrowed. Elena heard the tiny clink of spoon against porcelain. A man laughing near the window. Her own blood beating in her ears. "You set it up." "Yes. You wanted me to see." "Of course." Elena's hand covered her stomach beneath the table. "Does Matteo know Matteo knows what I need him to know?" For the first time, Elena understood something that frightened her more than Matteo's power ever had. Serafina did not simply control the family. She believed she was the family. "My son is sentimental," Serafina said. "Your mistake was believing sentiment could protect you. My mistake was thinking your son was free." That landed. Serafina's eyes sharpened. "Matteo was born into responsibility. You were born into ordinary struggle and mistook it for moral superiority. I never wanted your money. No. You wanted something worse. You wanted his attention away from the empire. I wanted a husband. You married a DeLuca. That was never the role." Serafina opened a slim folder and slid papers across the table. Elena did not touch them. "What is that?" "A clean exit. Divorce. A generous settlement. Confidentiality. Medical care through the birth. Afterward, custody arranged in a way that preserves the child's proper place." Elena stared at her. "Proper place? The DeLuca name is protection. Ownership. Survival." "No." Serafina's smile thinned. "You have not heard the terms." "I heard enough. You are a teacher with no savings, a sick father, a sister barely keeping her shop alive, and a child in your body who belongs to a family far more powerful than yours." Elena stood. "My daughter belongs to herself." That is a pretty sentence. Judges prefer facts. Elena's hands were shaking, so she curled them into fists. "You want a war?" Serafina lifted her teacup. "I want order. War is what happens when people like you refuse it." By 4 that afternoon, Lily had called in a favor. By 6, Elena sat in a small law office above a row of closed shops surrounded by the smell of old paper, burnt coffee, and radiator heat. Across from her sat Tessa Monroe, family attorney, former prosecutor, and the first woman Elena had met in days who did not look at her like she might break. Tessa listened without interrupting as Elena told her everything. The restaurant, the letter, Matteo, Serafina, the proposed agreement, the custody threat. When Elena finished, Tessa leaned back. "Do you have documents?" Elena opened her bag. Bank records, copies of emails, screenshots of messages from Serafina, security invoices, photographs of ledgers Matteo had once left unlocked, medical bills for her father, notes she had written for 2 years without admitting why. Tessa looked through them slowly. Then she looked up. "You were preparing?" Elena swallowed. "I was surviving." Tessa's expression changed. Not soft, respectful. Good. Survival leaves paper trails. The next morning, the war introduced itself properly. Tessa called just after sunrise. Serafina hired Grant Whitlock. "I do not know who that is." "You will. He is the kind of lawyer wealthy families hire when they want the court to look clean while they do something ugly." Elena sat at Lily's kitchen table with cold tea between her hands. "What did he send a formal notice? They are claiming you abandoned the marital home, cut off reasonable access to Matteo, and created emotional distress that could affect the child." The room tilted. "That is insane. It is strategy." Tessa's voice softened without losing its edge. They are also suggesting pregnancy stress and marital paranoia may be affecting your judgment. They are laying groundwork for emergency intervention after delivery. Elena laughed once, breathless and bitter. Because I walked away from a trap they created. Because they want to write the first version of the story before you speak. Elena looked at her bare ring finger. What do I do? You answer through counsel. You do not call Matteo. You do not answer Serafina. You do not respond directly to anything, no matter how emotional they make it. And if Matteo shows up, do not be alone with him. That afternoon, Elena went to Tessa's office to sign the response. She walked slowly along the wet sidewalk, one hand supporting the weight of her stomach. Lily had wanted to come, but Elena needed 1 hour where she was not held upright by her sister's love. She was almost at the office door when a black SUV pulled to the curb. Matteo stepped out. For a second, neither moved. He looked worse than he had at Lily's door. Unshaven, sleepless, wearing only a suit jacket against the cold rain, as if he had left his own body somewhere and arrived with what was left. Elena. She turned toward the building. Do not. I did not hire Whitlock, but your mother did. That is not the same. She stopped. It becomes the same when you let her speak with your name. His mouth tightened. I told her to stand down. Did she? He said nothing. That is what I thought. A man passed on the sidewalk and slowed before deciding not to become part of whatever storm stood between them. Matteo lowered his voice. I confronted her about the restaurant. She admitted it. Congratulations. You discovered your mother was cruel after she hurt me badly enough to leave. That is not courage. That is cleanup. He flinched. I should have seen it. Yes. I should have stopped it. Yes. I should have protected you. Her throat tightened. Yes. The word came out smaller than she wanted. Matteo took 1 step closer, then stopped himself. That restraint hurt too. Everything hurt. His failure, his effort, the fact that she could still read him. I need 5 minutes, he said. My lawyer said not to be alone with you. Call her. Put her on speaker. I do not care. You always care. Not about that. The wind pushed rain between them. A low ache tightened across Elena's back. The baby shifted hard beneath her palm. Matteo saw it. His face changed. You are freezing. I am fine. You are not. No, Matteo. I am not. But the weather is not why. He looked toward the SUV, then back at her. 5 minutes in the car. Heat on. Door unlocked. You can leave whenever you want. Elena should have said no. She knew that. But exhaustion made the world narrow. Tessa's office was only a few steps away, but the car looked warm, and Matteo stood there with his hands visible, not reaching for her. 5 minutes, she said. Inside, the heat wrapped around her so quickly her eyes stung. Matteo stayed behind the wheel. He did not lock the doors. For several blocks he drove without speaking. Finally he said, I moved out of the penthouse. Elena turned her head. Why, every room sounded like you leaving. She looked away first. Do not say beautiful things unless you understand what they cost. I know. No. You think pain is something you can endure because endurance is familiar to you. My pain was ordinary. Breakfast alone. Doctor appointments alone. Your mother correcting my life while you called it strategy. Sleeping beside you and feeling like the other woman in your marriage to power. His hands tightened on the wheel. At a red light he said, I gave the Empire the best of me and gave you what was left. Elena went quiet. The old Matteo would have defended himself. He would have explained pressure enemies, duty blood, the family name. This Matteo sounded like truth had finally cut deep enough to bleed. I told my mother if she keeps coming after you, I will walk away from all of it. Elena laughed softly without humor. You would never. I would. No. You would threaten it. You would say it in a room where it sounded noble. Then someone would call, a shipment, a judge, a debt, a family emergency, and there you would be again choosing the throne because it knows how to need you louder than I do. The car behind them honked. Matteo did not move. Elena looked forward. The light is green. Let them wait. That is the problem, Matteo. You think the world can wait because you are hurting. He drove her back to Tessa's office without another word. Before she got out, he said, "Tell me what to do." Elena's hand closed around the door handle. "Stop asking me to teach you how to become a husband after I had to leave to get your attention." He swallowed. "Elena, when your mother attacks me, stop telling me it is not you. Make it not you." Then she stepped out and walked into the building. 3 days later, Grant Whitlock proposed a meeting. Tessa said no. Grant asked again with language polished enough to sound reasonable and sharp enough to cut if refused. Neutral location, private conference room, no public filings if Elena was willing to hear terms. Tessa read the message aloud and looked at Elena over her glasses. "It is a trap." Lily crossed her arms. "Then we do not go." Elena sat on the couch in Tessa's office, both hands folded over her stomach. "I want to see her." Serafina. "Yes." "No," Tessa said. "I need to know what she really wants. She wants control." Elena shook her head. "Control is what she uses. I want to know what she wants badly enough to risk Matteo hating her." Lily's face hardened. "She wants your baby." The room went still. Elena looked down at her stomach. "Then I need to look her in the eye when she says it." The meeting took place in a glass conference room overlooking the Mississippi. Serafina was already seated when Elena entered with Tessa. Grant Whitlock sat beside her, silver-haired and handsome, with the calm expression of a man who had ruined lives before lunch and still made dinner reservations. Matteo was not there. Elena noticed before she could stop herself. Serafina noticed Elena noticing. "My son's presence is unnecessary." Elena sat across from her. "You always did prefer speaking for him." Grant smiled. "Let us keep this productive." Tessa placed her folder on the table. "Then stop threatening my client." "No one is threatening anyone," Grant said. "We are discussing stability for the child." "My child," Elena said. Serafina's gaze moved to Elena's stomach with a tenderness that made her skin crawl. "DeLuca blood." Elena felt Tessa shift beside her. Serafina continued. "You will remain in a residence we provide through the birth. Full medical care, security, staff, financial support. After delivery, custody will be arranged to preserve the child's rightful place within the DeLuca family." Elena stared at her. "You want me kept. I want my granddaughter safe." From what poverty? Panic. Emotional decisions made by a woman who has confused pride with motherhood. Tessa's voice cut in. "Careful." Serafina did not look at her. "You cannot give that child what we can. I can love her. Love is not a doctor. Love is not a judge. Love is not a secure home, a future protection." Elena leaned forward. "No. Love is why I know she is not property." For the first time, anger flashed across Serafina's face. Then she opened a folder. "Your sister has $28,000 in debt. Her shop is behind on rent. Your father's care costs more each month than Lily earns. Admirable devotion. Unsustainable reality." Elena's hands went cold. "You investigated my family. I assessed risk. You mean weakness. I mean facts." Elena stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. Serafina's eyes stayed fixed on her. "Sit down. You have not heard the most important part. I have heard enough. Celeste Beaumont is pregnant." The words did not explode. They hollowed the room out. Elena stared at her. Grant lowered his eyes to the papers as if pretending not to witness the wound he helped prepare. Serafina's voice softened. 3 months. She came to me frightened and alone. Matteo does not know yet. Elena could not breathe. Tessa's voice sounded far away. Do not respond. Serafina slid a photograph across the table, Celeste leaving a clinic, sunglasses on, one hand near her stomach. Elena looked at the picture and hated herself for looking. That proves nothing, Tessa said. I have documentation. Then produce it properly. In time. Elena sat down because her knees could no longer be trusted. Serafina watched her with calm satisfaction. You see the difficulty. If this becomes public, a court will see a pregnant wife who abandoned her husband after learning another woman may be carrying his child. Unfortunate but persuasive. Elena whispered, You made her do this too. Serafina smiled faintly. Celeste understands sacrifice. No, Elena said, lifting her eyes. Celeste understands payment. Grant looked uncomfortable. Serafina's voice cooled. You are outmatched. Take the residence. Take the money. Take the dignity I am still willing to leave you. Elena stood again, slower this time. I am not making a deal with the woman who tried to buy my child before she took her first breath. Serafina looked at Tessa. Control your client. Tessa closed her folder. My client is leaving. Elena walked out with her head high. She made it to the elevator before her body betrayed her. Tessa caught her by the elbow as Elena bent forward, one hand against the wall, dragging air into lungs that felt too small. She is lying, Tessa said. Elena shook her head. She was too pleased. That does not make it true. No, Elena whispered. It makes it useful. By the time Elena reached Lily's apartment that evening, she had made her decision. Lily opened the door and knew immediately. No, Elena walked past her. I need the gray suitcase. Elena, she knows about Dad. She knows about your debts. She knows everything. So we fight here. She will make here unsafe. She does not get to push you out of every place. Elena stopped beside the bed. She does not want me gone, Lily. She wants me desperate. There is a difference. Lily's face crumpled with anger she had nowhere to put. Where will you go? Elena pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket. Tessa had pressed it into her hand before she left the office. Apalachicola. Tessa's aunt has a cottage near the water, empty for the season. Florida in storm season while pregnant. Great plan. I know. You cannot run forever. Elena looked at her. I only need to run long enough to think. They packed in silence. Clothes, vitamins, cash, medical papers, the ultrasound photo, her mother's cross, a coat warm enough for long rain. Lily slipped a small packet of dried lavender into the side pocket and cried like she was angry at the tears. Near dawn, Elena stood by the apartment door. Lily held her carefully and fiercely. Call me when you get there. I will. No. Promise me. Elena closed her eyes. I promise. Downstairs, the flower shop was dark. The street was quiet. Rainwater shone in the gutters under the amber street lamps. Elena got into a cab and did not look back until Lily's building disappeared behind the corner. At the bus station, she paid cash for a ticket east. The woman at the counter glanced at her stomach, then at her face, and asked no questions. Elena sat near the back with her suitcase under her feet and one hand resting over her daughter. Her phone buzzed. Matteo. She let it ring until it stopped. Then came a message. Please, talk to me. Elena turned the phone off. Outside the window, the highway stretched ahead black and wet beneath a bruised morning sky. For the first time in days, no one stood in front of her. No Matteo, no Serafina, no lawyers, no glass conference room full of threats dressed as concern. Only the road, the rain, the small, steady movement beneath her palm. Elena leaned her head against the cold window. "I do not know where we are going, baby," she whispered. "But we are not going back." The bus pulled away from Baton Rouge and carried her toward the Gulf, where the air smelled different. The houses sat low against the wind, and the DeLuca name had not yet learned which doors to open. The bus carried Elena toward the Gulf, while morning opened slowly over the highway. Baton Rouge faded behind her in strips of wet pavement, gas stations, low buildings, and gray sky. The farther east she traveled, the less the world looked like the one she had escaped. The mansions disappeared first, then the iron gates, then the private cars with dark windows and men inside who watched mirrors too carefully. By afternoon, the road flattened. Pines stood close to the shoulders. Rainwater filled the ditches. Billboards advertised boiled peanuts, church revivals, fishing bait, and motels with vacancy signs half burned out. Elena sat near the back of the bus with her suitcase under her feet and her coat folded over her lap, one hand resting where her daughter moved now and then beneath her ribs. Her phone stayed off inside her purse. Still, she felt it. It sat there like a trapped animal, like Matteo's voice sealed behind glass, like every choice she was not ready to answer. She closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. Each time darkness softened behind her eyelids, she saw the restaurant again. Celeste's hand, Matteo's mouth, the candlelight, Serafina's cream suit in the tea room. The photograph of Celeste leaving that clinic with her face hidden and one hand posed near her stomach. Pregnant. The word had weight. It sat inside Elena like a stone dropped into deep water. She wanted to believe it was another lie. She wanted to believe Serafina had staged even that because cruelty seemed to be the only language the woman spoke without an accent. But belief had become expensive, and Elena had already spent too much of herself trusting people who kept knives behind polished doors. The bus stopped twice before sunset. At the second stop, Elena stepped down carefully, bought a bottle of water and a packet of crackers from a vending machine, then stood under a metal awning while warm rain fell beyond the curb. A young woman beside her rocked a baby against her shoulder. The child was red-faced and furious, tiny fists opening and closing against the woman's shirt. The woman caught Elena looking and smiled tiredly. "They come out with opinions." Elena looked at the baby, then down at her own stomach. "I am starting to believe that." The woman laughed softly. The sound followed Elena back onto the bus. By the time she reached Apalachicola, the sky was dark and low. The air smelled of salt rain diesel and wet wood. The bus dropped her near a small station with a flickering light and a bench scarred by old initials. Across the street, a bait shop had closed for the night. Farther off, masts rocked in the marina like thin black fingers against the clouds. Elena stood on the curb with Tessa's folded directions in one hand and her suitcase in the other. The town was quieter than she expected, not empty, just watchful. Low houses sat behind porches and palms. A church bell rang somewhere in the distance. A pickup rolled past, slow enough for the driver to glance at her, then keep going. Nothing moved with the polished violence of New Orleans. Nothing gleamed. Nothing pretended. For the first time in days, Elena felt no one reaching for her. That should have felt like safety. Instead, it felt like the silence before a verdict. The cottage sat 2 miles outside town on a narrow road lined with scrub oak pine and wet grass. Tessa's aunt had left the key beneath a blue ceramic fish by the porch steps. Elena found it after searching with numb fingers under the porch light which buzzed and flickered as if offended by work. The lock stuck once, then again. Finally, the door opened. Inside, the cottage smelled of cedar dust and old storms. The main room held a faded sofa, a wooden table with one uneven leg, a small kitchen, and curtains printed with blue flowers that had lost most of their color. The floor dipped slightly near the sink. The windows rattled when the wind pushed in from the water. It was nothing like the penthouse. No marble, no guards, no white lilies arranged by someone else's taste, no elevator camera, no portrait of a dead DeLuca watching from the wall, no locked study door with a man behind it deciding how much truth his wife deserved. Elena shut the door and leaned against it. A sound left her chest. Not a sob. Not yet. A breath, deep and broken, as if her body had been waiting for permission. Then her knees weakened. She slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor suitcase beside her, one hand on her belly. The tears came quietly. No drama, no beauty, just grief finally lowering its weapons. "I got us here," she whispered. "I do not know what that means yet, but I got us here." The baby moved beneath her palm. Elena laughed once through the tears. "That is not an answer." She slept that night on the sofa under 2 old quilts she found in a cedar chest. Rain beat against the roof. The cottage creaked and settled around her like an old body. Every time a branch scraped the window, she woke with her heart racing. Every time the refrigerator clicked on, she reached for a phone she had promised herself not to turn on. Near dawn, the rain stopped. Birds began making small, uncertain sounds in the trees. Elena lay still and listened. No footsteps in the hall. No phone ringing behind a study door. No man saying it was handled. Only Windwood and her own breathing. By the second morning, dizziness found her. She was standing at the kitchen counter trying to spread peanut butter over toast when the room bent sideways. Black dots gathered at the edges of her vision. She grabbed the sink with both hands and waited for the floor to stop rising. The baby moved. Fear cut through her so sharply she tasted metal. She sat down on the floor and stayed there until her breathing steadied. At noon, wrapped in her coat and moving slowly, Elena walked into town. Tessa's aunt had left a list of numbers and places on the kitchen table. The clinic was circled twice in blue ink. The building was small, white, and plain, with a ramp salted against rain-slick boards. A bell above the door chimed when Elena entered. The waiting room held 6 chairs, a basket of children's books, and a coffee machine, making a sound like it had personal regrets. A woman behind the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" Elena gripped the strap of her bag. "I need to see a doctor. Appointment number." The woman's eyes moved to Elena's stomach, then her face. "Sit down, honey." 20 minutes later, Elena sat on an exam table while Dr. Miriam Hayes wrapped a blood pressure cuff around her arm. Dr. Hayes was in her late 50s with short gray hair, warm brown skin, and eyes that missed very little. She wore no jewelry except a simple watch, and her white coat had a coffee stain near the pocket. She looked like a woman who had delivered babies during hurricanes and argued with insurance companies before breakfast. "When are you due?" Dr. Hayes asked. "About 3 months. About is for recipes. Babies prefer dates." Elena gave what information she had. Dr. Hayes listened to the baby's heartbeat, checked Elena's blood pressure twice, asked about swelling, sleep, food stress, and prenatal records. Elena answered carefully. Not lying exactly, not telling the whole truth either. Dr. Hayes set down the chart. "You are dehydrated. Your pressure is higher than I like. Stress is not helping." Elena looked away. Dr. Hayes watched her for a moment. "You running from someone?" Elena's head snapped up. "What I asked, if you are running from someone." "No." The answer came too fast. Dr. Hayes did not blink. "All right, let me ask it a different way. You showed up in my town 6 months pregnant, no local records paying cash, wearing city shoes on a road that eats city shoes and flinching every time the front door opens. I have been doing this too long to confuse that with a vacation." Elena swallowed. "I am not in immediate danger." That was not my question. The room settled around them. Kindness, Elena had learned, could be another trap if it came from people who wanted something. But Dr. Hayes sat quietly, pen resting against the chart face open, but not soft enough to be careless. Elena looked down at her hands. I needed somewhere quiet. Quiet can help, Doctor, Hayes said. So can prenatal care. I can pay for today. I did not ask what you can pay for. I said you need care. Elena blinked hard. Why would you help me? Dr. Hayes leaned back slightly. Because people are supposed to. The sentence entered gently and broke something open. Elena turned her face away. Dr. Hayes pretended not to notice. Weekly visits, the doctor said, writing on a pad. More water, more food, less walking alone in weather that could knock sense into a fence post. There is a pharmacy 2 streets over. Tell Ray I sent you. If he gives you trouble, tell him I still remember the fishing license incident from 2004. Despite herself, Elena laughed. It came out rusty. Dr. Hayes smiled once. There you are. On the walk back, Elena stopped at a small diner with fogged windows and a red sign that read June's. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, bacon, cinnamon, and old grease. A few locals sat at the counter. A radio played low near the kitchen. Rain tapped gently on the roof. A woman with silver streaks in her dark hair appeared with a coffee pot in one hand. You look frozen. I feel frozen. Sit before you make it official. Elena slid into a booth. The woman glanced at her stomach. Decaf tea. Yes, please. Food. I am not very hungry. That was not what I asked. Elena looked up. The woman smiled. I'm June. I own the place, which means I get to be bossy before noon and unbearable after. Elena ordered eggs and toast. June brought pancakes too. I only ordered eggs. The baby ordered pancakes. Elena stared at the plate. Then she laughed again, softer this time. At the next table, an old man in a faded cap folded his newspaper and looked at the loose button on Elena's coat. You staying at the Mason cottage? Elena went still. June glanced at him. Cal. The old man lifted both hands. Just asking. Porch rail out there is bad. Fixed it once, but bad wood has a memory. Elena studied him. He had a weathered face, kind eyes, and hands that looked built for repairing things that did not want to be repaired. Yes, she said carefully. I am staying there. Rail's still bad. A little. I'll come by tomorrow. That is not necessary. Cal took a sip of coffee. Most useful things are not. The next morning, he came with a toolbox and a thermos. Elena watched from the doorway as he worked on the porch rail in the damp cold. He did not ask about Matteo. He did not ask why she was alone. He only tightened screws, replaced a split piece of wood, and told her the roof would hold unless the gulf decided to become personal. When he finished, he handed her the thermos. Soup. June made too much. Did she know? But that is what we say when pride is listening. Elena held the warm thermos against her chest. Thank you. Cal nodded toward the cottage. Big houses do not mean safe houses. Elena looked at him. You know that from experience. Everybody old knows that from experience. Then he left before she could ask more. Days began to take shape. Clinic visits, June's diner, small meals at the cottage table, phone calls with Lily from a borrowed landline at the clinic because Elena still kept her own phone off most of the time. Tessa's voice, calm and precise, giving updates with the care of someone placing glass on a shelf. Serafina had filed nothing public yet. That frightened Elena more than a filing. Quiet from the DeLucas never meant peace. It meant someone was measuring the room. Matteo found her on the 5th day. Tessa called first. He knows where you are. Elena sat very still at the cottage table, one hand on the mug before her. How he is Matteo. That was not an answer. It was the only one that mattered. Elena looked toward the window. Wet trees moved in the wind. Is he coming? He is already in Florida. Elena's pulse jumped. Tessa continued before fear could finish forming. He sent a message through me. He says he will not come to the cottage unless you allow it. No guards, no driver. He is staying at a motel outside town. Elena closed her eyes. Tessa's voice softened. He also said to tell you he read the letter again. Elena laughed once quietly without humor. That is not a message. No, Tessa said. It is probably the closest thing to prayer that man knows how to send. Elena did not answer him. But that night, she slept with the porch light on. Matteo did not come. The next day, he did not come either. No black car rolled down the road. No men appeared at June's. No flowers arrived. No jewelry. No command disguised as apology. His absence unsettled her more than his presence might have. Because this time he was obeying. In New Orleans, Matteo sat alone in the back of a closed jazz club at 4 a.m. waiting for Celeste Beaumont. The club belonged to a man who owed him 3 favors and feared him enough to give all of them at once. Chairs were stacked on tables. The floor smelled of spilled bourbon and lemon cleaner. A single lamp burned near the stage where a microphone stood lonely under blue light. Celeste arrived without makeup. That was the first thing Matteo noticed. No diamonds, no silk armor, no camera face. Her blonde hair was pulled into a loose knot, and her hands shook when she removed her gloves. Matteo did not stand. You asked for this meeting. Celeste sat across from him. For a moment she looked young. Not innocent, never that, but tired in a way ambition could not conceal. I am not pregnant, she said. The words entered the room and stayed there. Matteo's face did not move. Celeste slid a small flash drive across the table. Clinic photograph was staged. The appointment was real, but not for that. The medical letter was drafted by Grant's office. My father knew enough to look away. Your mother paid everyone else. Matteo looked at the flash drive. His voice was quiet. Why are you telling me Celeste looked toward the empty stage? Because your mother started speaking about Elena's baby like the child already belonged to her. Matteo said nothing. Celeste's mouth tightened. I know what it feels like to be raised as a family asset. Smile here. Stand there. Marry that man. Carry the right name into the right room. I helped Serafina hurt your wife. I will not help her do it to a child. Did you enjoy it? Celeste looked back at him. The restaurant. Yes. Her face changed. No. You smiled. I was afraid. Matteo's eyes sharpened. Those things can live in the same mouth. Celeste absorbed that. Then she nodded once. I am not asking you to forgive me. Good. I am leaving tonight. You should have left before you touched my hand. I know. He picked up the flash drive. For what it is worth, Celeste said, standing. Elena looked at you like you had already broken her before she ever saw me. Matteo did not move. Celeste left through the side door. The club returned to silence. Matteo sat there until dawn with the flash drive in his hand, hearing one sentence again and again. Before she ever saw me. Serafina was having coffee in the courtyard when Matteo arrived at the mansion. Morning sunlight spilled over the stone fountain. A maid set a silver tray beside Serafina's chair. The garden smelled of damp earth orange blossoms and old money pretending it was nature. Serafina wore pale blue. Her hair was perfect. Her hands did not tremble when Matteo placed the flash drive on the glass table between them. Celeste is not pregnant. Serafina stirred her coffee. Disappointing girl. Matteo stood across from her. You forged medical records. I created leverage. You tried to destroy my wife. I tried to save your daughter from being raised by weakness. The word hit him harder than he expected. Elena is not weak. Serafina looked up. No, she is worse. She makes you want to be. Matteo's voice dropped. You set the dinner. You paid Celeste. You threatened custody. You used Elena's father and sister against her. I used facts. You used fear. Serafina set down her cup. Fear built this family. Fear kept you alive. Fear kept federal men from turning your father's funeral into a celebration. Fear kept rivals from putting bullets through your windows while you played schoolboy with that teacher. Matteo's hands curled at his sides. Do not speak about her. Serafina stood. Or what? You will punish me. You will become righteous now because your pregnant wife cried prettily enough to make you ashamed. He took one step closer. Elena did not make me ashamed. No, she made you sentimental. Sentiment is how men lose empires. He stared at her, and for the first time since boyhood he did not see a mother. He saw a gatekeeper standing in front of a prison and calling it home. Maybe this empire should have been lost before it reached me. Serafina's face changed, only slightly, but Matteo saw it. That afternoon, Tessa called him to her temporary office in New Orleans. She had taken a room above a bail bonds office that smelled of toner and old cigarettes. The place was not elegant, which was exactly why Matteo trusted it more than any marble conference room his mother had ever entered. Tessa had spread documents across the table. Bank transfers, old hospital records, a private toxicology request, a non-disclosure agreement signed by a nurse named Patricia Voss. Payments routed through a shell company Matteo recognized from his father's final year. He looked at the papers once, then again. The room seemed to narrow. What is this? Tessa removed her glasses. I started reviewing everything Elena copied from your files. Most of it is useful for custody. This is something else. Matteo picked up the toxicology note. His father's name sat at the top. Lorenzo DeLuca. Official cause of death, heart failure. The private note listed compounds Matteo could not pronounce. Sedatives. Cardiac interactions. Enough uncertainty to demand further testing. Testing that had never appeared in the official record. My father had a bad heart, Matteo said. The words sounded like something learned, not believed. Maybe Tessa replied. But someone paid a nurse to leave Louisiana 2 days after he died. Someone paid a private pathologist who later withdrew his findings. Someone paid a judge's brother through a construction contract 3 weeks before the death certificate was sealed. Matteo gripped the back of a chair. Memory returned in pieces. His father in the garden, thinner than he should have been, telling Matteo that the family needed to change before the name became a curse no child should carry. His mother standing in the doorway, listening. His father saying clean money spends slower, but it lets a man sleep. Serafina answering sleep is for men who can afford weakness. Then the hospital, the flowers, the smell of antiseptic. Serafina dry-eyed beside the bed, one hand resting on Lorenzo's still chest like she was holding down a door. Tessa slid one more paper across the table. It was a letter, old, folded, marked with Lorenzo's initials. Matteo opened it. The handwriting was his father's. If I do not survive the change, look to the person who benefits from the old order. Matteo sat down. For a long moment he could not hear the street outside. Not the traffic, not the shouting, not the siren passing 2 blocks away. Only his own breath. My mother, he said. Tessa did not answer. She did not need to. In Apalachicola, Elena came home from the clinic to find a package on the porch. Small, white, no return address. Her body knew before her mind did. She looked down the road, empty. Pines, wet grass, a gull crying somewhere beyond the trees. She carried the package inside and locked the door. Inside was the yellow baby blanket from the unfinished nursery, the one she had left in the penthouse. No note. None was needed. Elena backed away from the table. Her hand went to her stomach. The cottage, which had begun to feel worn and gentle, suddenly seemed too thin. Too many windows. Too many sounds outside. Too much distance between her and anyone who could arrive before harm did. That night a car idled at the end of the road. Its headlights were off. Elena saw it through the curtain and froze. She called Cal before she called Tessa. She did not know why. Maybe because Cal was closer. Maybe because old men with kind eyes and repair tools seemed more useful in the dark than attorneys with careful words. Cal answered on the second ring. "Stay away from the windows," he said. "No questions." 5 minutes later, an old pickup rolled past the cottage slow and loud. Cal did not stop. He drove to the end of the road, turned around, and came back with a sheriff's cruiser behind him. The dark car was gone. The sheriff spoke to Cal outside. Elena watched from behind the curtain, shaking so hard her teeth clicked once before she clenched them. Then she called Tessa. Then Lily. Only after both calls ended did she ask the question she had been avoiding. "Where is Matteo?" Tessa was quiet for one beat. "At his motel." "Tell him he can come." "Elena, tell him Cal will be on the porch." The cottage looked smaller with Matteo inside it, not because he tried to fill it. He did not. He entered slowly after knocking once, waiting until Elena stepped back from the door. He wore a dark coat, rain on his shoulders, exhaustion under his eyes. No guards, no driver, no phone in his hand. On the porch, Cal sat in a wooden chair with a shotgun resting across his knees. Matteo noticed. Cal said, "Pretty night to make good choices." Matteo answered, "Yes, sir." Elena stood by the kitchen counter, arms folded over her stomach. The yellow blanket lay on the table between them. Matteo looked at it. Something in his face went cold in a way Elena had not seen since the old life. Then he forced it back. She saw the effort. The man he had been rising. The man he was trying to become, holding him down. He did not touch the blanket. He did not touch her. He said Celeste was never pregnant. Elena closed her eyes. The relief was sharp, but it did not arrive alone. Behind it came anger, humiliation, grief for the hours she had spent imagining another woman carrying the proof of Matteo's betrayal. "Of course," she whispered. "I have proof. Recordings, payment trails, a statement from Celeste." Elena opened her eyes. "Why tell me in person? Because there is more." The cottage seemed to tighten around them. Matteo placed a folder on the table beside the blanket. "I think my mother killed my father." Elena stared at him. The rain began again outside, soft at first, then harder on the roof. Matteo's voice did not shake, but something beneath it had split open. "My father wanted out. Not all at once, but enough to change the business, enough to make enemies, enough to make my mother believe he was destroying the family. He died before he could do it." Elena touched the edge of the table, and now Matteo looked at the yellow blanket. "Now she wants our daughter because she thinks blood belongs to the empire. Our daughter does not belong to any empire." "No," he said. For once there was no argument in him. Only grief, only fury, only the terrible clarity of a man finally seeing the throne for what it had cost. He looked at Elena, then not like a king demanding his wife return, but like a man standing outside the ruins of everything he had mistaken for strength. "I am going to end it," he said. Elena did not ask if he meant his mother, the business, or the name that had followed them like a curse. The baby moved beneath her palm. Outside, Cal's chair creaked on the porch. Inside, the yellow blanket sat between them, soft as a threat. The yellow blanket stayed on the table long after Matteo stopped speaking. Rain struck the roof in steady waves. The cottage smelled of old, wood-damp wool, and the soup Cal had left cooling near the stove. Elena stood with one hand on her stomach, watching Matteo look at the blanket, as if it were evidence from a crime scene and a cradle at the same time. For most of their marriage, Matteo had carried violence like weather. It lived around him. It moved before him. People prepared for it when he entered a room. But the man standing in Tessa's borrowed cottage did not look violent. He looked stripped. "My mother sent this," Elena said. Matteo nodded once. "She wanted you afraid. She succeeded." His eyes lifted to hers. "I know." There was no defense in his voice, no explanation, no promise wrapped in velvet, just two words quiet enough to be real. Elena's throat tightened. The old Matteo would have stepped closer. He would have reached for her not cruelly, but with that dangerous certainty that his touch could calm what his life had caused. This Matteo stayed on the other side of the table, hands open at his sides. "I gave everything to Tessa," he said. "Celeste's recording, the forged medical letter, the payments, the files about my father, and your business." His face changed. "All of it." Elena stared at him. Outside, Cal's chair creaked on the porch. "You understand what that means?" For the first time, Matteo said yes. He looked toward the window where rain silvered the dark glass. "I used to think the empire was a house I was born inside. I thought leaving meant dying outside its walls. But it was never a house. It was a locked room, and I kept asking you to make a home in it." Elena's hand tightened over her belly. "Do not say beautiful things because you are scared." "I am scared," he said. "But that is not why I am saying them." She studied his face, looking for the familiar escape routes. Pride, strategy, control. He looked tired enough for truth. "Then what happens now?" Matteo drew a slow breath. "I meet the federal agents in the morning." The words landed softly, but the room changed around them. Elena looked at the man who had once moved through New Orleans like law did not apply to him, and she realized he was preparing to walk into a room where his name would not protect him. "What are you giving them?" "Shipping ledgers, offshore accounts, names, judges, routes, bribes. Enough to make sure my mother cannot reach you through the family because there will be no family left for her to command." "And you?" He met her eyes. "I do not know what happens to me." For a moment, Elena forgot to breathe. The baby moved between them, small and certain. Matteo looked down at her stomach, then back up. "I am not asking you to wait for me." "Good," she whispered, though the word hurt. "I am not asking you to forgive me." Her eyes burned. "Also good. I am asking you to let Tessa call me if you need anything." "That is all?" Elena looked at the yellow blanket. "What if I need you not to come?" Matteo nodded. "Then I do not come." The simplicity of it undid her more than any apology had. She turned away before he could see too much. "You should go." Matteo stood still for half a heartbeat, then picked up his coat. At the door he paused. "Elena." She did not turn. "I kept your ring." Her eyes closed. "Why?" "Because I needed to remember the night you loved yourself enough to leave me." The door opened. Rain rushed in. Then it closed behind him. Elena stood in the quiet, one hand on the table, the other over her daughter, listening as his steps crossed the porch. Cal's voice came low outside. "You driving in this?" Matteo answered. "Yes, sir. Roads are slick. I'll be careful. Start now." There was a pause. Then Matteo said, "I'm trying." Cal's chair creaked again. "Try louder where it counts." By morning, New Orleans had begun to turn against the DeLuca name. Matteo sat in a federal office with stained ceiling tiles, bad coffee, and no windows large enough to make a man feel powerful. Across from him were two agents, a prosecutor and Tessa Monroe, who had agreed to be present only because Elena trusted her, and Matteo did not trust himself to survive the room without remembering who he used to be. Stacks of files sat between them. The prosecutor opened the first folder. "You understand that cooperation does not erase your exposure, Mr. DeLuca." Matteo looked at the papers. Names, dates, transfers, a map of sins arranged in legal order. "I understand. You are giving us your family's operations." "Yes, your mother's involvement." "Yes, your own." Matteo's jaw tightened. "Yes." The agent across from him leaned back. Why now? Matteo thought of Elena in the restaurant, Elena in the hallway, Elena standing in the cottage with her hand over their child, while a yellow blanket sat between them like a threat. He answered carefully, "Because I spent my life calling fear protection." No one spoke. Then he pushed the next folder forward. "And because my daughter will not inherit a cage, just because my name built one." By sunset, the first warrants moved, not loudly, not dramatically. No music, no warning. Just men and women in dark jackets entering warehouses, law offices, storage buildings, port offices, and the private accounting firm Serafina had used for 20 years. Phones began ringing across New Orleans. Some men ran. Some men called Matteo. He answered none of them. At the DeLuca mansion, Serafina sat down to dinner as if nothing in the city had shifted. The long table was set for two, though she had not invited anyone. White candles burned in silver holders. The staff moved quietly, faces too blank. She wore black silk and pearls, funeral colors disguised as elegance. Matteo arrived before the first course. Serafina did not look surprised. "You smell like rain," she said. He removed his coat. "I smell like my father's grave." Her knife paused over the fish, only for a second. Then she resumed cutting. "Do not be theatrical." Matteo sat across from her. He placed Lorenzo's letter on the table. Serafina looked at it, then at him. "Old paper makes poor evidence." The nurse is talking, a faint tightening at her mouth. "The doctor, too." Serafina set down her fork. "What have you done?" Matteo looked around the dining room. The portraits, the silver, the flowers. The room where Elena had first learned what silence could cost. I opened the doors. Her eyes hardened. "You weak, stupid boy." The words should have struck deeper. Once they would have. Once he would have heard his childhood in them, all the lessons beaten soft into obedience. Sit straight. Speak less. Protect the name. Want nothing that makes you human. Now he only felt tired. Did he know, Matteo asked? Serafina's face went still. "My father. Did he know you would kill him?" She stood. "Your father was going to ruin us. He was going to clean us. He was going to hand our enemies a knife and call it mercy. He was going to let me live." Serafina's laugh was quiet and cruel. Live with what? A school teacher. A child. A little house where people clap because you remember to come home for supper. Matteo's eyes did not leave hers. Yes. That answer angered her more than any threat could have. "You think Elena Reed made you good?" No, Matteo said. "She made me stop pretending I was helpless." Outside headlights swept across the windows. Serafina turned her head. For the first time, fear touched her face. Federal agents entered through the front hall. The staff vanished as if they had been waiting years for permission. Serafina looked back at Matteo. "You would hand your own mother to strangers." Matteo stood. "You handed your husband to death. You handed my wife to fear. You tried to put your hands on my daughter before she took her first breath." The agents moved closer. Serafina did not resist. Pride held her spine straight even as they took her wrists. At the doorway, she looked back. "The Empire will not forgive you." Matteo's voice was low. "There is no Empire." They led her out beneath the portrait of the grandfather who had started it all. For a long moment, Matteo stood alone in the dining room listening to the mansion breathe around him. Then his phone rang. "Tessa," he answered. Her voice was sharp. "Elena is in labor." The world narrowed to one sentence. Matteo ran. The hospital in Apalachicola was small, bright, and overwhelmed by the storm rolling in from the Gulf. Rain lashed the windows. Nurses moved quickly. Somewhere down the hall a child cried, then laughed. Life and fear shared the same air. Matteo arrived soaked through hair-wet shirt clinging to his back. He stopped outside Elena's room because the door was half closed. A year ago, he would have opened it. That night he stood in the hallway, breathing hard, hands shaking. Tessa came out first. "She knows you are here. How is she?" "In pain. Angry. Scared. Very, Elena." His throat tightened. "Can I see her?" Tessa looked at him for a long second. She said, "You can wait." So he waited. He sat in a plastic chair beneath a flickering light while the storm beat against the building. He heard Elena cry out once, and every violent instinct in him rose uselessly. There was no enemy to punish, no door to break down, no money to throw at pain until it moved aside. There was only waiting. So Matteo DeLuca waited. Cal sat across the hall with his hat in his hands. June arrived with a paper bag of food no one ate. Dr. Hayes moved in and out of the room with the calm authority of a woman who did not care what anyone's last name was. Hours passed. Matteo stared at his hands. He remembered those hands on Elena's wrist. Not hard, just enough. Shame moved through him so sharply he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and covered his face. Near dawn, the door opened. Dr. Hayes looked at him. "She asked for you." Matteo stood too quickly. Inside, Elena lay propped against pillows, hair-damp face, pale eyes blazing with exhaustion. She looked furious and holy, and more alive than anything he had ever seen. He stopped near the door. She noticed. A faint, pained smile moved over her mouth. "Now you learn doors?" His eyes burned. "Yes." A contraction hit before she could answer. Her body tightened. She reached out blindly. Matteo stepped forward, then stopped offering his hand without taking hers. Elena grabbed it. "Do not make this about forgiveness," she said through her teeth. "I won't. Do not touch me unless I ask. I won't. If you lie to her one day, even once, I will leave faster than I did the first time." His voice broke. "I know." The next pain took her words. Matteo held her hand while she crushed his fingers and cursed him once, possibly twice, in ways Dr. Hayes pretended not to hear. Then sunrise opened pale over the Gulf, and their daughter entered the world screaming. The sound broke him. Dr. Hayes placed the baby on Elena's chest. Elena began to cry. Not from fear this time, from arrival. "Isabella," she whispered. Matteo stood beside the bed, unable to move. The baby was impossibly small, red-faced, furious, alive. Her fists opened and closed against Elena's skin like she had come ready to argue with the world. Elena looked at Matteo. "Sit down before you fall." He sat. A nurse guided Isabella into his arms a few minutes later. Matteo held his daughter with the terror of a man carrying something sacred after a lifetime of breaking things. His hands trembled. Isabella quieted. That undid him completely. "I am sorry," he whispered to her. "I am sorry you were born into my mess." Elena watched him. "She was not born into it," she said. "Not if you end it." He looked up. "I started." No, Elena said, tired but steady. You start again tomorrow, and the next day, and every day she asks who you are. Matteo nodded, tears slipping silently down his face. I will. The months that followed did not become gentle all at once. The DeLuca warehouses were seized. Men who had once kissed Serafina's hand gave statements to save themselves. Judges resigned. Accountants disappeared, then reappeared with lawyers. Celeste Beaumont left the country after giving sworn testimony. Grant Whitlock lost clients faster than he lost arrogance. Serafina was indicted for conspiracy fraud witness tampering and charges tied to Lorenzo's death. She appeared in court wearing pearls, chin-high eyes, empty of remorse. Matteo watched from the back row. He did not look away. Reporters called it the fall of a dynasty. Elena called it paperwork. She did not move back in with Matteo. That mattered. He rented a small house 10 minutes from the cottage, close enough to help, far enough to respect the space she had fought to claim. He sold the penthouse. The mansion was seized. The DeLuca Foundation was transferred to independent control. He signed every document Tessa placed in front of him, including one that prevented his money name or family connections from being used against Elena in any custody dispute. Tessa read the clause twice. Matteo signed without flinching. Elena heard about it from her lawyer, not from him. That mattered too. He learned to arrive on time. He learned to knock. He learned to ask, "May I come in?" and wait for the answer. He learned diapers, bottle temperatures, burp cloths, tiny socks that vanished as if Isabella had enemies in the laundry. He learned that babies did not care about former kings. He learned that sleep deprivation humbled men more thoroughly than federal prosecutors. Some evenings Elena let him stay for dinner. Some evenings she did not. Some days she watched him hold Isabella and felt something inside her soften. Other days, the memory of Celeste's hand or his grip on her wrist returned without warning, and her body remembered fear before her mind could argue. One night, she found him standing outside the nursery door looking in at Isabella asleep. The cottage was quiet. Rain tapped lightly on the windows. A nightlight cast a soft glow over the crib. "You still scare me sometimes," Elena said. Matteo turned slowly. "The old you," she added. His face did not close. "I know. I hate that. I know. I do not want to spend my life watching for him." He nodded. "Then I will spend mine making sure he stays buried." She looked at him for a long moment. "You cannot promise that with words." "No," he said. His hands were empty at his sides. "I am learning." A year after Elena walked out of the penthouse, Matteo asked if she would meet him at the school library where they had first met. She almost said no. Then she said yes, because no had become a door she trusted herself to use. The library smelled the same. Paper, dust, floor cleaner, children's glue. The reading rug was more faded now. New drawings hung by the windows. A crooked turtle poster still clung to one wall. Matteo stood between the shelves in a simple white shirt, no suit jacket, no watch worth noticing. On the table between them lay Elena's plain gold ring. She stopped when she saw it. "I kept it," he said. "I know. Not because I thought it meant you were coming back." Elena looked at him. "Then why?" "Because it was the first honest thing you left me." Her eyes filled before she could stop them. Matteo did not move closer. "I do not want my wife back because I lost control," he said. "I want a life with you if you choose me freely. If you do not, I will still be Isabella's father in the way you allow. I will still keep my promises. I will still stay changed where you can see it." Elena touched the ring. "If love and myself ever become enemies again, I will choose myself." Matteo nodded. "I would expect nothing less." She picked up the ring, but she did not put it on. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket. "Walk with me." Outside, New Orleans was warm and loud and alive. A streetcar bell rang in the distance. Somewhere a trumpet lifted a bright note into the afternoon. Matteo walked beside her. Not ahead, not too close. Beside. Years later, Isabella would run through that same library with a picture book in her hands, while Matteo sat cross-legged on the rug reading badly on purpose as children laughed around him. Elena would stand in the doorway and watch him. No throne, no empire, no locked doors. Just a man who had lost everything he once called power and finally learned how to stay. Elena once left a letter that burned a dynasty down, but the real ending was not the fire. It was the quiet morning after, when the man who had ruled through fear learned that love was not something to possess. It was something to be worthy of again and again with the door left open.